Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. Tonight, we're not just going to talk metal, we're going to talk heavy metal EPs. I've picked out three 12-inch EPs. All of these are from US bands from the 1980s. Some of them are more obscure than others, but they're all pretty good. So hopefully you'll enjoy what I've got to show off. We'll take a look at them, talk about the bands a little bit, play some sound clips. So if there's one that you're unfamiliar with, you can get an idea of what it sounds like. And that helps you decide if it's something maybe you want to go track down on Discogs or eBay, or if it's just not for you. It's still cool to get a chance to hear some of these things and know that, oh yeah, I did hear that once, but yeah, not really my cup of tea. Or, oh man, that's really good. Never heard of it before. Guess I'm gonna have to put it on the want list and see if I can add it to a Discogs cart. Yep, that's the plan. Make people spend money on old records that I happen to like. All right, so what have we got lined up here? First tonight, band out of New York City. This is their only release, to my knowledge. The band is called Street Child, made a 12-inch, 4-track EP called Street Child in 1989. We'll check out a clip of this, and I'll show some of the stuff that comes with this. We are going to be listening to a bit of the song called Erotic Insomnia. That's an interesting song title. As usual, may skip ahead here and there in the song if it gets to kind of a dull interlude part or something like that. But here we go, Street Child's Erotic Insomnia.
Erotic insomnia. Over the bridge, the emptiness feels so cold. Trapped in this hole, trapped in eternal pain. Love is the demon caught from behind.
All right, so there we go with Street Child, Erotic Insomnia. Really good riff, very heavy, nice guitar bite going on there. Dig the track quite a bit, good vocalist. And it's pretty emblematic of what you get on this release. Sound quality isn't 100%. This is a small-time band releasing this on something called Hell's Kitchen Records in 1989. So yeah, it's not going to sound like Pyromania or anything, but it doesn't need to. Holds together pretty well. Now, the copy I have been showing as the song clip played, this is a reissue. Buried by Time and Dust got in contact with the band, and they put out an edition with some extra tracks and stuff on it. And let's see, do I have the date for the reissue? This was an earlier one on Buried by Time and Dust, and it was a 2010 release. Yeah, so it's still been over a decade already since that came out. But yes, it has the booklet with lots of information and the extra tracks on it. It's an excellent EP. I don't have an original copy to show off. Originals have always been very hard to find, and unfortunately, it's one of those records that is very expensive. If you look on Discogs right now, it will say something like, 4 for sale from $179. And $179 is like, that's a lot for a record. But it's going to get worse. When you actually check the listings on Discogs, the $179 copy is for a copy that doesn't include the record. It's just an empty cover, and the cover has some damage on it. So if you want a copy that actually comes with the record inside the cover, you have to buy one of the other copies, and those are starting around $1,000 a piece and going up from there. So yeah, that is why I don't own an original Street Child. I like the record enough that I would track down an original if it was some kind of relatively sane price tag, but $1,000 way out of my price range. I'll take a moment here to do just a small aside because there's not much else to say about Street Child. Made one cool EP, it's extremely expensive. Get the Buried by Time and Dust reissue and be perfectly happy with it. A small aside, I usually don't talk about prices I pay for records. There's not much information for anyone to gain from that. I'm not here to brag about what kind of great deal I got on things. I'm not here to brag about how much money I can afford to waste on heavy metal records. And it usually just gets, some people really riled up, how dare you spend $63 for a 7-inch single? What kind of madman are you? Do you know how many starving children on the other side of the planet you could have fed for that $63? And on and on and on. So, yeah, I will say this. I have never spent $1,000 on a record. I really have no intention of ever spending $1,000 on a record. So yes, I've spent a lot for some records. I've never gotten into that price range. That's kind of out of bounds for me. The other point I'd like to make along with that, if you're somebody who really starts to get your nose a little bit out of joint at the idea of someone paying quote unquote a lot for a record album, it's very, very easy to armchair quarterback this thing and say, $100 for a record, I would never pay that. That's stupid. You'd have to be a moron to do that. I get where people come from with that. To some folks, $100 is a ton of money, and yes, could be used to improve their quality of life in a lot of other directions, as opposed to buying one single record. That's absolutely fine. On the other hand, a lot of people that I've encountered over the years who take that kind of somewhat snobbish, derisive attitude about people who spend a lot on records, it also many times comes from somebody who, is just in a socioeconomic state where it really is out of the question for them. And it's something they don't really see as, how that could be possible. And I know this because I was one of those people. If, going back to my college days, I would see things on sale lists occasionally for like, $100, $125, $200. And it's just like, I'm like, what kind of morons pay this much for a record? I don't get it. A big part of why I didn't get it was the fact that there's no way in the world I could ever have done it. And at the time, I was often, scraping together money, just to go buy 1 or 2 new CDs a month. A $30, music budget a month, you're not even contemplating spending, hundreds of dollars on a single or an EP or some rare private press thing. But fast forward 10 years from, the college days, and I remember the moment this kind of changed for me very well. Was working full time, was looking at eBay one afternoon, and one of those early Pentagram 7-inch singles had popped up on eBay. I was just like, oh, that's so cool. Haven't seen one of those in forever. Pentagram's one of my favorite bands. I'd always thought it'd be so cool to own one of those things. I've never had a single one of them. You hardly ever see them. They always sell for this crazy amount of money. So I'm just kind of, I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at the list. I'm thinking, oh, some jerk's going to pay, hundreds and hundreds of dollars for this. And that's ridiculous. And, I could never afford that. But then, the voice in the back of my brain said, wait a second, Alan, you're not a college kid anymore. You have a big boy job now. You don't spend, you don't get $4.75 an hour asking people if they want fries with that or not. Look at your paycheck. Oh, yeah, that is a lot bigger than I'm used to. It's like, do the math for a minute. You got this bill, rent, a mortgage, car payment, phone, carry that. How much money are you going to have left at the end of the month after you pay everything? Well, I want to actually have a decent amount. Well, you could take a tiny little bit of that decent amount you're going to save and actually enter a bid on this record. It may win, it may not, but you actually could pay and try to get that record that you've wanted for ages. You now have the ability to spend that much for that record if you want to. Do you want to? It's like, huh. And I really do remember the sensation of just sitting there realizing I actually could try to buy that Pentagram single. It's going to be a lot, definitely a lot more than anything I'd ever, paid for a record before, but yeah, I could. So I think I will. I put in a bid. In the result, the record didn't sell for nearly as much as I thought it was going to be. Again, to me, it was this unobtainable object. It was, going to be, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and people were going to be fighting each other for it, and I had no chance. I think it sold for around $120, and I want it for that. And I realize some people right now are thinking, Jesus Christ, why did you spend $120 for one single? Well, because I really, really wanted it. It's by one of my favorite bands. It's very rare. Hardly ever see copies of it. Even since then, I've rarely seen it. And I was then in a financial place in my life where I could afford to buy a record like that from time to time. Not something I want to do every day of the week, then or now. Since then, again, life has changed in other directions. I've got, family to take care of, other expenses. I very, very rarely spend any kind of big money on a single record anymore. That, if I looked at it today, I'd be like, yeah, probably would pass. There was actually something on eBay a week before making this recording. It was $100. Single I really want. It's been on my want list for ages. I thought, well, I don't think I will. I'm going to pass on that. I will wait, be patient. I think maybe I can find a copy of that cheaper sometime. And the record ended up to get out exactly one bid for exactly $100. So it's not like a ton of people were clamoring around for it. Next time it shows up, might be able to get it a little cheaper. Sorry for the long aside there, but I did want to point out that pricing on stuff, there's always an amount for all of us that seems ridiculously high. That amount does change as you proceed through life. When you're young, you're working minimum wage jobs, you don't have your own place yet. Yeah, you're not prone to wanting to spend a lot for one single piece of entertainment. I absolutely get that. When you get a bit older, though, you got to remember, if you want to be don't be judgy about it, I think is my point. Because when some people are doing that, and they're in a different place in their life. I've known guys, they make $10,000 per month take home. To them, spending $500 for a record is really no big deal. It's just like, yeah, sure. I don't have that. I'll pay that for it. I can't do that. You probably can't do that. They can. And they're not skipping on their bills. Their kids are not eating dog food or something like that to, support daddy's record habit. They have a lot more money and disposable income, and okay, if that's what they want to spend it on, so be it. Long rant aside, so let's get back on track here. Got a couple more cool EPs to show, and some of these will not be nearly as expensive as the Street Child was. Great record, circling back to Street Child. Just inexpensive, hard one to find. If you ever find an original out in the wild, and it's at a bargain used bin price, hey, pick it up. You just made an excellent find. Next up, we've got a 3-track EP by a band out of California called SLAVEN. Don't know what the names are referenced to. It's not Slave One, so it's not a Star Wars thing. It's not Slave Raider. It's not Slaver. SLAVEN, maybe? I'm going to stick to SLAVEN, but not 100% sure. Odd name. Anyway, this one came out in 1985, and we're going to check out a clip from the song called Wicked. All right, so there is SLAVEN playing Wicked off their Slave to the Heart EP. Pretty good song. This one comes out in 85. And 85 is, an interesting time for heavy metal. Thrash is blowing up by this point. It's about to, completely take over in 86. You also have bands, especially a lot of California bands, starting to get, more and more glammy, more MTV exposure, more radio play. SLAVEN's still kind of somewhere in between. They're maybe leaning a bit towards the glammy thing. Some of the pictures definitely indicate that. There's a little bit of sleaze to the track Wicked. But it's also still sticking to, a pretty straightforward heavy metal kind of register. So there were a lot of bands like that who were kind of left in between. So it's like, are we supposed to be a thrash band or a glam band now? We'll just kind of continue to steer right through the middle there. Decent EP. I like it. Tracks are good. What's this whole collector's edition personally autographed B-side sticker about? Well, what they did on some copies, I guess there's two different versions of this. But yeah, some versions, the songs are all on one side, and the flip side is just etched. It's probably not going to show up very well, but yeah, if I can get the light to show it, that you do have band members, autographed it, and so you've got essentially an etched B-side. Kind of a neat gimmick. If your 3 songs fit on one side of the 12-inch EP, yeah, sure, why not? Something a little different, kind of cool. So SLAVEN did not do any other recordings, but a couple of members did have some life after this project. Jerry Frazier on guitar went on and played with Sentinel Beast. He's not on the album, but he played on at least one of the demos and played live with them for a point. The bigger success story, though, is the bassist, Mike Hollander. And let's get Mike's picture back up here. Let's see. Mike is in this corner here. So Mike Hollander, bassist for SLAVEN. Probably not something he still has on his resume, but you might recognize him if the face rings a bell. It is because he's also known as Mike Gonzalez, who currently is playing bass in a band called Blood Moon Ritual since 2019. But he also would go on and play for Dark Angel on their Leave Scars and Time Does Not Heal albums. So, yes, Mike, I think it's fair to say, definitely moved up a step or so after SLAVEN was done, and is featured on those 2 later Dark Angel albums. So kind of cool that the band does have a footnote in the history of, one of the better known heavier thrash acts. That's SLAVEN. The EP, I don't see it around a lot, but it's not a particularly expensive item. There's a couple of copies I've seen on sale for line around this time of recording that are like, $30 to $50 for something like that. All right, so moving on, our last entry for the evening is another California band. This one's from Anaheim, and they released a very promising EP in 1982, but then kind of just disappeared from the face of the earth, more or less. Not exactly. We'll get to that. The band is called August REDMOON, which I always thought was a really great name for a band. And they released this EP, Fools Are Never Alone. This one has 5 tracks on it, so getting some bonus material there. We are going to check out a clip from the song Bump in the Night. So this is from the August REDMOON EP. So there's August Red Moon and banging one out, Bump in the Night, 1982 EP. This was pretty heavy for an American band in 1982. This is right at the dawn of when stuff like Metal Blade Records is starting to happen. You get into those first couple of years of the 80s, and the American heavy metal releases are kind of few and far between. You've got a few things: Riot, Virgin Steel, The Rods, and bands like August Red Moon. The EP's got a surprisingly good sound to it. It came out on a label called ARM Records. The cover concept always was a little goofy to me. I never did quite know why they thought it was an excellent idea to have the pale white glove with the spiked wristband, and these little charms, in case you can't see, all have the August Red Moon logo in them. So there's a cool, fun little thing to add. Instead of just having regular pins, you actually have like some kind of necklace charm thing with the band logo. Kind of a different, neat promo item. Anyway, nice EP, good example of very early American heavy metal, but the band never really followed up on it. And they did end up changing their name a couple of times, if I remember right. Somewhere around 83, 84, they went by the name Terracuda, as in like a terrestrial barracuda? Like when they could crawl around on land and bite people or something? I don't know what's up with Terracuda. Maybe there's a meaning there I don't quite get. And then after that, they changed their name to Eden. That name makes you wonder if they had drifted a lot more commercial sounding. I have no idea, though. Just not sure. Bottom line, though, as August Red Moon, you just got the one EP release. Now, there was a compilation of material with demos and extra tracks put out called Heavy Metal USA. That came out in 2015. And they actually put out a full-length album in 2016 called Drums of War that I know absolutely nothing about. I did not even know it existed until I was, digging around, doing a little research, getting ready for this recording. So can't tell you anything about those. Last thing I can tell you about the August Red Moon EP is that some copies were pressed on red vinyl. Those used to be extremely expensive. It was one of those early colored vinyl variants that didn't show up hardly at all. The first one or two times I saw ones get listed in the earlier mid 2000s, they were going like, $300, $500 kind of thing. It seems like more copies have started to kind of get into circulation over time. It's still something that's going to cost you probably a couple of $100 if you're serious about wanting to get it on red, but it has come down. It's not as hard to find as it was 20 years ago when you hardly ever saw a copy of it on the red wax. I don't have the red vinyl version. My copy's just on black, and I'm fine with that. Would I pick up a copy on red vinyl given the chance? Maybe. It would very much depend on the price, though. It's not something I would want to pay a fortune for myself. But a good record nonetheless. All right, so there you have it. 3 cool 12-inch EPs and a small diatribe about, not judging people for paying too much for records sometimes. Now let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of these 3 in particular? Anything jump out at you as being good, bad, or in between? Does anybody know anything about this 2016 album, Drums of War, from August Red Moon? I did not even know it existed. How does it sound? Are there original members in the band? I could have looked those things up, but I decided the video is probably going to be a good length as it is. We'll talk about that in the comments down below. And yeah, that should do it for this outing. Hope everyone is doing well. Until next time, take care. And as always, keep banging your head and bumping in the night. Wait, that sounds kind of dirty. That's not where I wanted that to go. Oh well, too late now.